He opens up with a woman sitting in front of a confession box, pouring her heart out to the priest amidst tears and sorrow. She asks for forgiveness as she has tread on a path that can't be traced back to normalcy. She further explains about having taken that which wasn't hers to possess, which results in still pouring out her heart. She makes a note of her most desired wish, which was bearing a. After seeking for a long time, she felt God turn deaf ears to her pleas and refused to grant her an offspring. She turns on a high pitch, and the confession takes a new direction, an accusation. The lady decides it's time to tick off her list of deeds and sacrifices to God, to the priest, and introduces a dramatic flair by banging her forehead on the part of the box that shows her face to the priest. This action results in her head being cut and flowing downwards. She hysterically starts recounting her recent deeds with blood on her hands, and among the deeds is eliminating an innocent woman who did absolutely nothing to her, and taking her, which she dropped at the church before coming to make confession. She, however, states that some people will be on the move looking for her, and will probably think she's a monster. A priest is seen lighting candles at the church, where he hears the crying of a baby. He moves towards the sound, and after locating the child, sees a figure from his peripheral vision. When he focuses his eyes on the person, it turns out to be someone from a noose, and quite lifeless. A club is about to get open, starting a countdown from 10 minutes before the doors allow people to start coming into their establishment. The announcer lets the dance contestants get their things and move in order to get their rehearsals right. Mel and Brandon are seen quite prepared to wreck the dance floor with their moves, as the announcer sorts his playlist and begins a track from a vinyl record. As the music begins, Brandon and Mel get entangled in a steamy dance that involves feeling themselves a lot. As the audio begins, they burst into a fit of movement that seems to out the other contestants to jealousy. After a flurry of activity between them, they reach a point in their rehearsals and make a mistake which puts a halt to their dancing. Brandon apologizes. Mel tells him not to worry about it and put it behind them. The announcer asks if they want to restart the rehearsal, but Mel tells him they're good and warmed up. He calls Tony and Stephanie to take the floor and start their own rehearsals. Outside, a reporter gives an audience a rundown of the history of the building which the club was in and redecorated. It turned out to be a long-abandoned church. The reporter tells the people about the grand opening of the club, which was named Inferno, and like its name, is burning up the night sky and time of the populace. People are shown lining up to get a space to enter into the club, and according to the reporter, they've been lined up for a long time and are quite anxious to get in to see the dance competition finals being held there tonight. The crowd, being anxious to see the finalists of the competition, also craves to discover who would be crowned winner firsthand. Mel and Brandon are revealed to be dating as a passerby in the club commends them on their performance during the rehearsals and showers them with praises, being proud of their little lovebirds, as Mel and Brandon made Tony and Steph so jealous. It isn't something they could hide on their faces. The individual is called Menmo by Brandon, who expresses concern towards the performance tonight, hence not feeling confident about himself, thinking he'd blow it for himself, and Mel not having any of his attitude. Mel decides to jog Brandon down memory lane and reminds him of the first time they met, which apparently turned out to be through dancing as well. He asked her to dance with smoothness and confidence, and eventually started stepping on her feet due to nervousness. She gave him some advice to take it one step at a time, and eventually, he lost his nervousness. The talk seems to work as Brandon stands up, and he starts talking about the competition and how they'll perform. Most importantly to him, when people start watching the show, they'll realize something special is happening, which boils down to Mel's elegance and greatness. Mel notices an old woman peeping at them through an opening, and when Brandon notices her eye trail, he follows it to see nothing. He gets back to his speech about tonight, when the announcement blares out that the doors have been opened and people can now troop into the Inferno. Still quite disturbed by the old woman's appearance, Mel decides to step out for a while to catch some air, which leads her to the bathroom and a toilet seat, where she starts throwing up. Menmo finds her in the bathroom and confronts her about what's happening to her. She confesses that she is late on her period and hasn't said anything to Brandon yet, as they've been so focused on getting to their goal, which was the final competition tonight. After requesting privacy from Menmo, she's left alone, and just before leaving, Menmo lets her know that she and Brandon have nothing to worry about. After being left alone, Mel hugs her stomach tight, and the lights in the bathroom flicker off and on. When it stabilizes, the bathroom seems to be different, and noticing it, Mel goes outside to meet the rest. Upon getting outside, the lights and music have been changed, and a look of confusion fills out the outline of her face. Mel makes her way towards the dance floor, which has disappeared and has been replaced by a lot of seats set for a church congregation. As she makes a retorting comment, we are whisked to the present where Mel is standing in the club, looking quite strange with pitch-void black eyes, standing inanimately, looking at nothing and everything at the same time. Everyone seems to have found their groove as they're all seen dancing, while Mel stands fixed in one place. The DJ, seeming to notice her, turns his head towards her position, but she is nowhere to be seen. Mel in the church calls out to the empty space for anyone that might be around and listening. To this, a raspy voice responds to her saying she hadn't laid eyes on Mel since she was a baby, and goes on to tell her how she looks just like her mother, eventually showing some pleasure in her voice when she mentions that Mel has come back to her after so many years. She speculates that the baby Mel is carrying is a gift brought to her by Mel. After she's asked what the place is, back in the real world, Brandon looks quite disturbed and lost, as he's sitting alone as the announcement for the commencement of the competition comes on, and all the dance couples are requested to report to the stage without fail. Missing his dance partner, Brandon gets up, quite lost and alone on the other side. Mel walks her way through the building seeking an exit of some sorts. As she makes her way through, she calls for any other form of life that might be listening to her. A strange dark presence approaches her, and feeling it, she turns towards it only to reveal the face of the woman confessing her sins to the priest. Wide-eyed, Mel looks down as the woman places her hand on Mel's stomach, and a baby is heard crying, to which the woman smiles knowingly at Mel. In the club, Brandon heads towards the bathroom to look for Mel, opens the bathroom door calling out to her to know if she's still inside. The Mick makes an announcement for the dancers to come on stage, to which Brandon emits a nervous look as he's nowhere near to finding Mel yet. The MC calls for Tony and Stephanie to come perform on stage, being the first contestants to grace the stage tonight. An unconscious Mel is seen somewhere laying down, and the strange woman's voice in her mind tells her about ridding her of the burden she carries, and Brandon never knowing about the baby. Mel wakes up and gasps for a huge breath of air. Brandon, still searching, is about to give up and turn back when he sees a piece of jewelry which belongs to Mel. After fondling it for a little while and lost in thought, he hears Mel screaming for his help while being shown to be locked in a cupboard of some sorts, which turned out to be the confession box scene which the woman used her head to hit. She manages to extract herself by hitting the cupboard multiple times, and as she spills out, a woman jumps right out on her and attacks her. Brandon makes his way towards the sound of Mel's voice. When he arrives, he discovers she's way farther than he thought. It takes a lot of running to reach the place eventually. The door is locked in place, and the woman is seen pinning Mel down with a bizarre scene. It seems she's intent on eating off Mel's body as she's almost chewing on her. Brandon calls out to Mel, who seems to be in a great deal of pain as she can't even respond to the calls. When he tries to open the door, the woman screams in anguish saying, "It's mine." Oops, we got a ghost with ownership to doors syndrome. Brandon confidently assures Mel that he'd get the door open as soon as possible and keeps battering the door with hits from his shoulder. After many back-to-back hits that didn't make it to the billboard of door openings, the door caved to the pushes and bumps on it. After the door got open, Mel is seen laying down flat. Brandon rushes to her, cradling her head on his knee, trying to revive her to consciousness. However, the efforts prove futile as she's not responsive with the inanimate state she was shown to be in the club, and with black eyes. After trying without any success to make her wake up, he resorts to yelling her name as loud as possible and calling for help, which facilitates Mel waking up and slowly realizing her surroundings. After seeing Brandon, she's confused for a while, which is immediately replaced by fear after she sees the cupboard where she was kept and started acting hysterical, asking where the woman went. Brandon tries calming her down, and in the heat of the moment, she confesses what she's been hiding since, about the lateness of the period and being pregnant. Brandon responds with happiness and is overjoyed at the pros of being a father, kissing Mel and easing away all doubts she had about how he'd take the news. She's carried back up by Brandon, who looks like the main character, walking through an explosion detonated in an action scene, but rather amidst a dancing group of people. The movie ends with a lot of unanswered questions. What happened to the woman that kidnapped Mel? Was she trying to prepare Mel for the breaking of the news to Brandon? Did Brandon and Mel perform for the finals that night? Most importantly, did they win the finals if they went on with the performance? We may never know.